let's go to reading books, for example, because that was another lovely part of this book. The reading of fiction seems a rather trivial pastime, and I certainly need to get back to doing more reading of fiction. But you were saying the reading of fiction actually is a great for the brain, great for the mind, and great for the soul. Explain how reading fiction does this.
Yeah. Prompt me to come back, if it's okay, Andrew, later on, if we can, to the questions about the business model and social media, because I think you've just touched on one of the key aspects of this. But you're totally right. So this is the first time in the history of the American Republic that most Americans in any given year do not read a single book. 54% of Americans don't read a book. And there's a slight uptick under COVID, which is encouraging, but it was slight. And it was the first time that trend has not been going downwards and downwards for an extremely long time. And as you know, I remember I was talking about this in Provincetown. Whenever you would see me, you'd be like, how come you've got another fucking book? I had a real heartbreaking moment in Provincetown because, as you know, Andrew, there's a completely amazing place in Provincetown called Tim's Used Books that you introduced me to, which is a gorgeous, big, dusty, musty secondhand bookstore. And the summer I was there was a young woman who worked there who was really intelligent. And I was going in to buy books all the time because my attention, it staggered me how much my attention came back. I thought I had just degenerated because I got older a bit. My attention went back to what it had been when I was 17 for reading.
Yeah, but you're a bit of a freak. I mean, you read novel after novel after novel. I mean, your ability to read, I mean, I never had that ability to read that quickly.
It was fascinating, Andrew, because this young woman, I guess she was in her mid-20s in Tim's Used Bookstore. Every day I'd go in, she would be reading a different book. She'd be reading James Baldwin or Tolstoy or whatever. And I remember saying to her one day, oh God, you read fast. And she said, no, I can only read the first chapter of any book and then I just can't focus anymore. And there was some really haunting thing. It's like, God, you're surrounded by all this literature, the best books ever written. You're so clever. She was really smart. And yet she couldn't do it. She couldn't read. It was like some awful, vision of it felt almost dystopian. But it's interesting. So if we think about the reading of fiction specifically, there's a brilliant academic called Dr. Raymond Marr who's done fascinating research on this. So he hypothesized that one thing fiction might be is a kind of empathy gym, right? When you read a novel, you are imagining what it is like to be another person in incredible detail for a really long period of time, right? And he hypothesized maybe when you do that a lot, it carries over and you're better at empathy in the outside world. I can explain all his research methods, but I think he quite persuasively showed that is in fact the case. His research has shown reading fiction really does boost your empathy, that it's actually a much better virtual reality machine than what we call virtual reality, and it helps you to understand the inner lives of other people. And the decline of the reading of fiction in particular, and I want to stress, he says that all long-form simulated social universes, so a very long-form TV series, can perform a similar function. It's not just the reading of books. But when we get into much more fragmentary states, right, when you're not immersed in imagining what it's like to be another person, but you are very briefly seeing fragments of other people's lives, like on Instagram, that does not, I'm going beyond Professor Marr's research now, but I would argue, does not inculcate empathy